فارحم تلك الوجوه التي قد غيرتها الشمس.
O Allah, have mercy on those faces whose color was changed from the sun. And have mercy on those cheeks that changed color whilst walking to Abi Abdullah. And have mercy on those eyes from which tears of mercy and love for us flowed. And have mercy on those hearts that felt pain and the heat of sadness for us. And have mercy on the wailing that was for us. The annual 40-day anniversary of the death of Al-Hussain sees millions walking to the grave of the Father of Freedom. A spectacle unmatched in its scope or significance by any other peaceful protest in the free world. But who started this tradition, and where did it stem from? Upon research, we find that it stemmed from a man that carried out this tradition 1,300 years ago. A man named Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, the first pilgrim of the grave of Al-Hussain. Jabir began his legendary tale as a companion by the side of the Prophet of Islam. A magnificent life included his meeting with 5 of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt after the Holy Prophet, ending with Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. The Holy Prophet of Islam told Jabir, "O Jabir, a child will be born in the offspring of this son of mine, who will be the most knowledgeable and wisest person of his time. O Jabir, Allah will keep you alive until his time, and you will see him. O Jabir, when you meet him, convey my salams to him."
The great Sahabi, the great companion of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Jabir ibn Abdullah ibn Amr al-Khazraji al-Ansari, which means that he is of the Khazraj tribe, which were one of the 2 dominant tribes in Yathrib, known as Medina at that time, came from one of the poorer families from Yathrib. And it is said that he was born 16 years, some historians say 15 years before the Hijrah. That means to say when the Prophet began to make his moves to move to Medina, Jabir would have been a young man, someone who's reaching the age of becoming an independent personality. His father, Abdullah al-Ansari, was one of the people who the people of Medina knew to be a fierce warrior, and also someone who's quite known for his trustworthiness and known for being someone who's compassionate. He is narrated to have used to give water and food out to fellow people like him who were poor from whatever he had in his own gardens, which were mainly date palms. And his son Jabir continued this tradition. In later times, he would take whatever he had from his date palms and he would sell these to be able to take from the alms take from it and give to as alms, and also to repay his debts. So their family background, the house of Jabir, is actually quite modest background. They are Arabs in descendancy, but also the fact that they were Yathribis meant that they were one of the first families to meet and welcome the Holy Prophet ﷺ.
As we understand, the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to stand by a mountain pass called Aqaba. And at this mountain pass called Aqaba, many people would congregate and listen to the Prophet of Islam preaching about the tenets of Islam and the faith in general. And when the whiff of Islam and this Prophet called Muhammad and this religion of one God traveled across to, for example, the different areas of the Hijaz, in Medina there were 6 individuals. And these 6 individuals, they had heard of this individual called Muhammad ibn Abdullah. And so they had gone to this area of Aqaba during the time of Hajj. As we know, the polytheists and the Bedouin Arabs, they would give a lot of importance to Hajj. So they came to Makkah for this pilgrimage, and they stopped at Aqaba, and they heard the Prophet of Islam speaking. And just hearing what he was saying, they were completely, in a sense of awe at this individual and what he was teaching. And so as we understand, one of those individuals, because as we know, Jabir was from Medina, he was from the tribe of Khazraj. Jabir was one of those individuals, one of those 6 individuals that first goes to the Prophet of Islam at Aqaba. And he hears this individual talking, and he falls in love with the Holy Prophet of Islam and Islam as a religion. And so then they go back to Yathrib, they go back to Medina. When they return in Medina, Jabir is one of those individuals who represents Islam. He tells them about the Prophet. He tells them about the teachings that he was preaching to those individuals at Aqaba. And in this way we understand 12 more people, 12 more individuals from Yathrib are interested in Islam. So Jabir was one of the reasons why the Aus and the Khazraj knew about the Holy Prophet of Islam. He then travels back with them the next year during the time of Hajj with those 12 individuals. And 5 out of the 6 original individuals who were there last year. He travels with them to Aqaba once again. He says, this is the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Listen to him. When they listen to him, then they say, we will make a pledge that, Prophet of Islam, Ya Rasulullah, we will not murder, we will not commit shirk, we will not commit infanticide, we will not commit adultery, and we will listen to whatever you say. We will be obedient to you in times of sorrow and grief and in times of happiness. In other words, they say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah. Jabir is one of those individuals that allows this to happen. Then they return once again back to Yathrib. So Jabir again is one of the representatives of Islam. He is teaching others in Medina about Islam. The next year, the second pledge takes place. So the first year, it was not known as a pledge. The second year, when Jabir takes the 12, it's called the pledge of Aqaba. The third year, there are 73 individuals, 2 women, and according to some reports, 300 to 500 Jewish individuals from a Jewish tribe who also wanted to accept Islam, along with Jabir and the other original 6. This time they go again, and a second pledge is taken of allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then when they return back, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari is one of the individuals whose duty it is to represent Islam and to bring people to the faith. This was his important role. In other words, when we find Islam in Medina and Yathrib, one of the reasons we found it was Jabir bin Abdullah. Then there is one report that says that his father, Abdullah ibn Amr, was also one of the representatives from this pledge. So one report says he was also with Jabir, and he was also one of the people that was told to represent Islam in Yathrib. But Jabir had a key role in both the pledges of Aqaba and propagating Islam to those in Medina. And that's why we understand the groups in Medina, the tribes in Medina, then called Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to their area, to live with them.
He is one of the most prominent amongst the Ansar because he is very prominently known as one who would attend the masjid of the Holy Prophet of Islam every single day. So whenever the Holy Prophet of Islam would be leading prayer or giving a sermon, one of the people who would always be present in the masjid would be Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. As a consequence of this, he, by the fact of him being present at every single juncture when the Holy Prophet was in the masjid, and the fact that he would always take notes when the Holy Prophet of Islam was speaking, giving sermons, meant that there was a collection of notes that Jabir had with regards to what the Holy Prophet of Islam had said. For this reason, he is known as a great scholar, because he, of course, narrates what the Holy Prophet of Islam had said later on, in terms of what the Holy Prophet had said with regards to particular verses of the Holy Quran, what he had said with regards to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam. Many famous ahadith have been narrated from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari.
Jabir was around 17 years of age when the Battle of Badr took place. It is said that he came to the Holy Prophet seeking his permission to join him in the battle, and the Prophet gave permission for Jabir to join, though he was one of the younger companions. And his father, Abdullah al-Ansari, was also someone who took part in the battles. In the second battle, Jabir narrates himself in one of the ahadith that is narrated from him. He says, I wished to enter the battle of Uhud alongside my father. My father forbade me. I took part in 17 battles with the Holy Prophet, and I missed one. That was the Battle of Uhud. And my father forbade me to join because I had, in some narrations, 6, some say 7, and another narration says 9 sisters. And my father did not wish that I or him face danger, and there would be no one to look after my sisters. And so my father did not give me permission, and I went to the Holy Prophet, and the Holy Prophet says, you must obey your father's wish on this. So I was not able to take part, but what I did was able to bring some water to some of the men who took part in the Battle of Uhud. And he says, my father was a shaheed during that battle. He became a martyr during the Battle of Uhud. So Jabir did not take part in the Battle of Uhud, but he was one of the Badris. He was one of the people that took part in the Battle of Badr, and then subsequently he attended many of the battles that the Prophet took part in. He was also a person who attended the battles of Badr and Uhud and Siffin, and he remained with the Imams after the Holy Prophet ﷺ.
As we understand, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari had a very long life. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala graced him, gifted him with a long life, to the extent that he sees 5 Imams, as we know and as is famous. And because he had such a long life, he is a key narrator of several ahadith. Previously, as we've seen, Uhud and Badr took place. He was one of the key narrators in this. For example, the Battle of Khandaq. He is a key narrator in the Battle of Khandaq. But other than the battles, because as we understand, Jabir in his life was with the Holy Prophet of Islam in 19 battles. Some may have been small expeditions, some were actual, very serious battles. But 19 of these he witnessed. And so we find reports, I was with the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this event, on this occasion. And books are filled with his narrations in this regard. However, not only did he narrate about battles and go to battle and fight or help out in whatever way he could, he was also a key figure in narrating every single possible thing he could about the Holy Prophet of Islam's nature, about events that took place. For example, if you look at the books of ahadith, some of the maraji have classified the books, the narrations of Jabir with regards to their topic. So you'll find narrations on aqa'id, he asked the Prophet of Islam, for example, about tawheed. His narrations on salah and in fiqh, for example. His narrations about key events that took place. For example, Hadith al-Kisa is from who? And Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Number 2, it is said in some of the narrations that when Ayatul Tathir was revealed, Jabir was also in the house at that time. So in the house was who? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sayyidah Zahra, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hassan and Hussain salamullahi alayhima. Salma was the house that it was held in, and she was there also. Jabir, according to one narration, says, I was also there. I was there, and I spoke to the Prophet of Islam, and I said to him, are all of your progeny going to be, purified in this way, or are purified in this way? The Holy Prophet of Islam then says, O Jabir, from the line of Hussain ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi, there will be 9. All of them will be purified, including Al-Mahdi. Jabir says, and who is the Mahdi? فَمَنْ Al-Mahdi? Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replies by that very famous sentence that we find fills books on the topic of Imam Mahdi. This hadith is found. يَمْلَأُ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا كَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. So Jabir is a key narrator. He narrates Hadith al-Kisa. He narrates Ayat al-Tathir. He narrates, for example, many other occasions. Yes, the battles were there. He also narrates on topics of, for example, politics. I was with Amir al-Mu'mineen. I was with Hassan ibn Ali. He narrates about Imam Hussain salamullah alayhi as well. And the key narration that we have of Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, which is a proof of the imama of the 12 imams, is the famous narration that, O Jabir, you will see Imam Baqir salamullahi alayhi, who is the 5th imam. Why is that a key narration? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, before the existence, before they came into this world, he narrates or he mentions each and every single one of the imams till Mahdi. This is our proof. This was narrated before they came into existence. We have the names of each and every single one of them. And Jabir is one of the individuals who has actually seen 5 of those imams. Jabir, as we understand, was someone who had a thirst for knowledge, which is why when Amir al-Mu'mineen was present, Jabir would be there. Or Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would call Jabir specifically and say, Jabir, sit with me, I'm going to talk about a certain topic. And we have this in the ahadith. So because he was someone who had thirst for knowledge, he was a jurist, he was an individual who had knowledge, he was an alim, because of his close relationship with each and every single one of the imams. And the proof of this is the number of ahadith he has on various different topics.
Through his companionship with the Holy Prophet of Islam, Jabir became not just a devout servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also a great scholar of immense knowledge. His selfless devotion to the religion of Islam makes him stand out as one of the greatest companions of the Holy Prophet and his family. However, he also has a special, lofty status, that of the first pilgrim to the grave of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. Despite being old and blind, he traveled to Karbala whilst walking barefoot with his servant Atiyah. His love and connection with Abu Abdullah al-Hussain was something unmatched by many of his time.
As we know, Jabir is unique amongst the companions of the Holy Prophet of Islam, that he gets to spend time with 6 of our infallibles, the Holy Prophet of Islam, and then the first 5 imams. He spends time with all of them. But there is something that's very interesting with regards to Jabir, that he has a very special relationship with Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and this is way before the event of Karbala takes place. So even after, or even during the life of the Holy Prophet of Islam, and particularly after the Holy Prophet of Islam, when many people have abandoned the Holy Prophet of Islam, his family, and they have not followed Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam as commanded to do so by the Quran and by the Holy Prophet, we see that Jabir is still one of the very few who remains on the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. He remains loyal to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and he has a very particularly special relationship with Imam Hussain alayhi salam, which is highlighted in a particular incident which takes place when a Syrian comes to visit Medina, and he asks the people to take him to the most generous of people. And at that moment in time, somebody takes him to Jabir and says to him that Jabir will tell you who's the most generous person in Medina, and Jabir says it's Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. So the Syrian asks, he says, for what reason do you say that Imam Hussain alayhi salam is the most generous of people? Of course, there's many examples of the generosity of Imam Hussain alayhi salam from the moment that he is born through to the event of Karbala. Jabir picks out particular examples which are actually important lessons in our lives today. He gives us the example of the fact of not how Imam Hussain alayhi salam treated the people whom he considered friends, nor the examples of people whom had come to ask him for assistance, but rather he gives the examples of people who had come to Imam Hussain alayhi salatu salam despite the fact that they had wronged Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and the Imam still helped them, to show that real generosity and true generosity is not when you help your friends, or when you help somebody who asks you for help. But when you help someone, even though you really don't want to help this person, you don't feel any reason to help this person, you have no obligation to help this person, and yet you still help that person, then that is real generosity. So Jabir says, he says that there's one occasion where Osama bin Zayd, who very famously is the man whom the Holy Prophet of Islam had appointed as the leader of the army when he was on his deathbed. When the Holy Prophet of Islam passes away, Osama moves to Damascus and disappears from the pages of history. He reappears many years later in the presence of Imam Hussain ﷺ and says to him that, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I'm about to die and I have a debt that I need to pay off. And I don't have the money to pay off this debt, and yet if I die and I haven't paid off this debt, then this will be a problem for me. So Imam Hussain ﷺ asks him how much the debt is, and he gives him the money for the debt. This is after the fact that when Amirul Mu'minin ﷺ needed people, Osama was in Damascus and he didn't come to the aid of Imam Ali ﷺ. When Imam Hassan ﷺ needed people, Osama also knew what was going on, but he didn't come to the aid of Imam Hassan ﷺ. When in the times of battle and in times of peace, when people were needed, Osama was there, available, fit and healthy, yet he didn't come. And when people told him you should go to the aid of Imam Ali ﷺ, or should go to the aid of Imam Hassan ﷺ, he replied by saying, I don't want to get involved in this matter. It's better for me to stay away from this matter. And yet, what is Imam ﷺ still helps him. Jabir uses this as an example to tell us that it's not about the fact that Imam Hussain could have turned around and said to Osama, where were you when my father needed people? Where were you when my brother needed people? So for what reason should I help you? The fact that the Imam teaches, or the Imam is teaching us, that this is what it means to be truly generous, that if you can fulfill the need of a person, regardless of who they are, regardless of their history, regardless of how they've acted, you have an obligation to help them. In addition to this, he gives us another example. He says to the Syrian that it was after the battle of Nahrawan, where Imam ﷺ showed mercy on certain people. A person came and he said, the rope is tied too harshly, can you loosen the rope? Imam Hussain ﷺ loosens the rope. When it was discovered later on who this person was, the narrative state that it was Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, who the Imam knows is the person who is eventually going to kill him. Yet, despite this knowledge and despite the fact that he knows that this is going to happen, he still shows mercy unto that person.
The great companion, the great Sahabi Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, at the time of the Battle of Karbala was around 76 years old. He was an elderly man, and the narrations say, when they describe his visit to Karbala, they say he was blind, he needed to be guided by his servants. And the Imam, Salamullah Imam Hussain, several times in the Battle of Karbala, or before, in the events leading up to the Battle of Karbala, he excuses certain companions. Some of them he says, go because you can be safe if you leave this part, go somewhere else. Some of them he wants them to act as his messengers and people who will continue the mission after his death. So he says, go so that you may tell people our story. Some of them he hears that they have debts and they haven't managed to relinquish some of their debts. He says, you may leave as well. And he excuses the women from fighting. He says, women are not allowed to join this fight. And he even says to Joan, who is previously the servant of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, he says, Joan, you are a servant. You're here out of your love for us, but you are not obliged to fight in this battle. So you are excused, go. So Imam Hussein's mission is based, number one, on having people who should be there to fight. His da'wah is not meant to be forced upon people. So Jabir was not included in this because he was elderly, and he had to actually be guided by his servant and his companion Atiyya al-Awfi. He had to walk with him because he could not see and he was quite infirm, quite old. And so he was excused from that aspect of it, physically not able to fight. The second reason was that Jabir was a companion of great standing. He would be able to recount to the people of Medina and elsewhere, wherever he went, exactly what the status of Imam Hussain was. And so he did not attend the Battle of Karbala to act as a messenger for Imam Hussain, to say to people what Imam Hussain would stand for. It is narrated that he used to take his walking stick and lean on it outside the mosque of the Prophet and cry out, Ya ma'shar al-ansar, O people of the Ansar, Hubbu Aliyin. He says, describing the love of Ali. Love of Ali is Iman. وَمَنْ أَبَى فَقَدْ كَفَرْ عَلِيٌّ خَيْرُ الْبَشَرِ. He says, Ali is the best of creation. And whoever disagrees, he has become a kafir. So look at the strength of this message that he's putting out. He says, أَدِّبُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ عَلَى حُبُّ عَلِي. O people of the Ansar, O people who support the Prophet, raise your children to love Ali. And those of you whose children do not love Ali, these are the munafiqeen, or these are the ones who are born, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, from adultery. And he says, in the Prophet's time, we used to know who the munafiqeen were by their love towards Ali. This was during the time of Muawiyah, and later on during the time of Yazid, that this is what Jabir was doing. It reached a point where Al-Hajjaj, when he came during the time of Abdul Malik, so a few years after the death, after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, he heard that Jabir was doing this. He would go around telling people to love Ali, to respect the Ahl-Bayt, and talk about the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He took some molten iron and branded Jabir. Jabir was at that time over 80 years old. He branded him on his hands and arms in order to shame him, in order to silence him as well. And Jabir bore this for the rest of his life, this punishment, this torture that they put him under. So this was one of the reasons why Jabir was not taking part in the Battle of Karbala, to be able to carry out the message, spreading the message of Imam Hussain.
On 61 AH, when the Battle of Karbala takes place, Jabir, as we understand, is an old individual. He's very elderly. In Medina, in Yathrib, Jabir hears of the grandson of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hussain ibn Ali, being killed and massacred. What does he do? Any individual who had love for Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, any individual that was a close companion of the Holy Prophet of Islam, when they heard about Imam Hussain salamullahi alayhi's death, if they were alive at the time, they had one reaction. Of course, crying, lamenting. Jabir began crying to such an extent that he immediately tells those with him that I need to go to the shrine, visit Imam Hussain salamullahi alayhi, visit his grave, and send my condolences to Zahra salamullahi alayha and the Holy Prophet of Islam. Because if you have a friend, you are good friends with someone, he passes away, but you have such a long life that you see his grandchild, you have connection with, therefore, the grandson and the grandfather. So if anything happens to the grandson, it will hurt you more because you also had a very close relationship with the grandfather. Because Jabir has had a very close relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he rushes, even though he's old and weak and feeble, he rushes with Atiyah, an individual that was a jurist, an alim. Atiyah was a man of high status, and they go together to Karbala, walking barefoot, to visit Imam Hussain salamullahi alayhi's grave and send their salams and salutations to Hussain ibn Ali.
Atiyah is one of the tabi'een, second generation of people after the Holy Prophet of Islam. He's born in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and he's named by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam as well. He's originally from Hamadan, which used to be part of the Persian Empire before it was conquered by the Muslims. And he's a servant of Jabir, and he is a student of Jabir, that he learns hadith and he learns tafsir and the merits of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam from Jabir.
The Ziyarat al-Arba'een is actually marked by the actions of Jabir al-Ansari. When he reaches the earth, the land around Karbala, and he feels that this is a special earth, this is a special land, special area, he says to Atiyah, where have we reached? He said, these are the areas that the people of the surrounding lands call where the Battle of Karbala took place. This is called Al-Ghadariya, also known as Taf, and this is what they refer to as Karbala. He says, where is the river? Show me the river. And he points, or he takes Jabir towards the river, and Jabir then comes close to the Furat. The narrations say he changed his clothes, he did a ghusl, he put on perfume. So in the ziyarah, when we look at the ziyarah of Imam Hussain, the authentic sources, If we refer to some of the, even the books of the scholars today, when we look at the mustahab a'mal regarding the ziyarah of Imam Hussain, it is mustahab to go and do ghusl before you go do the ziyarah of Imam Hussain. It is mustahab to put on your best clothes. It is mustahab to wear perfume. So this is the first actions that Jabir did that we take to be the best method of performing ziyarah. After having done this, it is said then he said to Atiyah, take me back towards where the grave of Abu Abdullah is and make sure that we shorten our steps. For Allah, I have heard from the Holy Prophet ﷺ that each step we make towards this visitation of Imam al-Hussein, we will get thousands of thawab for each step. So shorten our steps so we can get more and more thawab. And this is still today when we read the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, that is mustahab as you get closer to the shrine of Imam Hussein to take shorter and shorter steps so that you may get more and more thawab as you approach the shrine. So this is another of the actions that Jabir did in his ziyarah that established for us the best method of doing ziyarah. Having got closer to where the grave of Imam Hussein was, Atiyah says to Jabir that we are now close to the grave. He says, Al-Misni, take my hand and make me feel the grave. And he put his hand towards the earth, which was freshly laid. The bodies had only been there a few days. Jabir then falls on his knees and begins to kiss the grave and to kiss the earth and begins to cry and cries out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He cries out, Ya Hussein 3 times. It is mustahab in the ziyarah today when you go to the shrine of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, to fall down on your knees and to try to kiss or feel the area surrounding the shrine. In the old days you could reach the actual grave. Today it is now covered with a sort of sarcophagus over the actual gravesite, and above it there is an area, enclosed gate, which looks like a window looking down into the grave. It is mustahab as far as you can reach to be able to perform the ziyarah as Jabir did. And then thereafter that he stands and he begins to recite the ziyarah. And in the ziyarah he mentions certain aspects, like he says, I bear witness that you carried out the commandments of Allah and you stayed away or far from all the things that Allah forbade. I bear witness that you established the prayer, that you established the zakah, and I bear witness that you sacrificed for the sake of Allah. And he goes on a list of these things, which shows us that the ziyarah is not only meant for cultural purposes. It is a reaffirmation of faith. It is as if you are giving bay'ah to the Imam as if he were alive today, saying that I know what your status in the eyes of Allah is and I reaffirm my faith to you. For example, in Ziyarat Warith, we see that the testament to the tahara of the Ahl al-Bayt, لَمْ تُنَجِّسْكُمُ الْجَاهِلِيَّةُ بِأَنْجَاسِهَا. In the Ziyarah of Ziyarat Warith, we say to the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt that the Jahiliyyah has not touched you. All of you are ma'soom and infallible, father to son. So this is again one of the dictates that we believe in terms of the Nubuwwah and the Imamah, to reaffirm our faith to these elements. And thereupon, after he stands, he says, Wallah, he makes a statement. He says, Wallah, because I have loved you, I have now joined you, and I will get the thawab of being in the battle of Karbala. Atiyah, his servant, says, Ajib, Jabir, you did not see a battle, nor a spear, you did not hear a cry, nor see blood. How is it that you will be with them on the day of judgment as if you took part? He says, I heard from the Holy Prophet, my beloved, that a person who loves the actions of a group on the day of judgment is resurrected with them. And so because of this, if we love Imam al-Hussein, we love the actions of his companions and the Ansar, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza fawzan azima. If we love them, then Allah will make us with them on the day of judgment. Again, this is now teaching us that the ziyarah is not something that we do take lightly. The ziyarah is actually an act of worship. It is not less than what the Hajj is in terms of what affirmations of faith we do, our connection to Allah in this action. It is no less than that in stature. So that is why Jabir, his method of performing ziyarah until today is actually performed. And when he sees Imam Zain al-Abidin, or when he hears that Imam Zain al-Abidin is coming to him, he falls to his feet, again showing respect to the Imam. So these are all acts, the mustahab a'mal of how to do the ziyarah, and also teaching us how to enter the shrine of Abi Abdullah, knowing who you're going to see and knowing what effect this could have on you, inshallah.
Crying and lamenting on the grave of Hussein ibn Ali, Atiyah suddenly turns around, and Atiyah can see from far away a group of people. Atiyah says to Jabir, Jabir, I can see a group of people coming towards us, coming towards this grave. Jabir says, is it an army? Is it the army of Yazid or someone else? Now, according to some narrations, Jabir then walks towards. Another narration is, in fact, the caravan comes closer and closer. And as they come closer, Atiyah says something that breaks the heart of every individual. He says, I can see an old man walking towards me. Who is this old man? Of course, this old man is he was in actual fact in his 20s, his late 20s. Sayyid al-Sajjad, salamullahi alayhi. Sayyid al-Sajjad then comes. Jabir recognizes him. Jabir weeps at the fact that Atiyah is saying he is an old man with white hair, with a back which is bent. Then, very famously, Sayyid al-Sajjad, salamullahi alayhi, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he mentions some of the masa'ib, some of the grief and sorrow that took place. And he takes Jabir in a way that someone would show an individual who came to a museum, someone who would show an individual who visited a certain place. Imam Sajjad says, "Oh Jabir, let me take you and show you what happened on that day, because Jabir, you were old, you were unable to come, you were unable to fight. Let me show you how it took place." He says, "Ya Jabir, ha huna, for example, yuqtalu atfaluna." Oh Jabir, here is the place, ha huna, that our children were killed. Ha huna, for example, here is the place, Ya Jabir, that the right hand of Abu al-Fadl was cut. Then he takes them further on. Ya Jabir, this is the place where the left hand of Abu al-Fadl was cut. Ya Jabir, this is the place, for example, where Ali al-Akbar falls from his horse. This is the place where Imam Hussain tries to pick up the body of Ali al-Akbar. This is the place where Qasim's body is trampled. This is the place where the 6-month-old baby in his neck is pierced an arrow. In this way, Imam Sajjad Salamullah alayhi goes to each of these maqamat, each of these stations, and tells Jabir, ha huna, here it is. Here it is that our tents were set on fire. Here it is that the women were looted and we were captured and made prisoners. And these lines of Imam Sajjad to Jabir and the way in which they converse are still mentioned today famously from the minbar.
Jabir visits Karbala whilst old and blind. Grief grips his heart and sorrow torments his mind. He hears a man digging. Who does Jabir find? Alone weeps Imam Sajjad by the grave of his father. He asks Sajjad, "Oh master, what happened here? Why do I find Hussein's grave wet with your tears? Why do I hear that heads were carried on spears?" Sajjad takes his hand and weeps. "Let me show you, O Jabir." He speaks to Jabir and his voice is shaken. "Jabir, over here the Ansar were taken, and no one was left to protect the children. Hussein stood crying their names and none of them would answer. Over here, the women cry. Do you hear them? O Jabir, here they massacred our Qasim, a young boy, and the swords towered over him. With armor too big for him, we brought him to his mother. A body looks like Muhammad or Ali. Jabir, here Ali al-Akbar was killed thirsty, and within his father's arms he passed away. Who brought him water at last? Muhammad and Fatima. Did Abbas clench your fingers when he was born? O Jabir, here I saw the moon's arms were torn, yet only when he lost water would he mourn. With no flag and no arms, I buried the flag bearer. O Jabir, don't ask why I returned in dread. I have returned to return my father's head. O Jabir, his grave weeps from the blood he's bled. When I buried him, he cried, bring to me Ali al-Asghar. Long after the events of Karbala, the fate of Jabir, as foretold by the Holy Prophet of Islam, was yet to come. He would sit at the door of his house whilst blind, crying out, where is Muhammad? Where is Muhammad? Awaiting the arrival of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir.
Holy Prophet of Islam mentions this hadith in reply to the tafsir of Surah 4 verse 59, where he tells Jabir about the companions, about the imams rather, that will succeed him. And he tells Jabir that the first of the Ulil Amr is Ali, who's in front of you, and then is Hassan, Hussain, And after Hussein it's his son Ali, and then after Ali it's his son Muhammad, whom you will meet. His name will be my fifth son, whose name will be my name, and deliver my salam to him. So it's mentioned that Jabir had become very old, and in his old age he had become blind. As a result of this, he would sit in the streets of Medina and he would call out, Aina Muhammad, Aina Muhammad, and people would look at him and they would laugh at him and they would point and say that he has gone mad. Why is he calling out for Muhammad? Until one day that he hears the footsteps of the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says that I sense the footsteps of a person whose footsteps are like the footsteps of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And so he comes close and he asks who this is, and he is told that it is our fifth holy Imam, it's Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam. And so he comes to the Imam, he delivers that salam, and the Imam alayhi salam has a conversation with him on a number of issues, and many ahadith that he narrates from our fifth holy Imam. Amongst them, quite famously, is the hadith which our fifth holy Imam narrates with regards to the characteristics of our Shia, of our followers. And he tells Jabir that this is what the followers of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ are supposed to be like. These are the characteristics that they possess. In addition to that, there's a hadith or conversation which between Jabir and our fifth holy Imam, where the Imam says to him that Jabir, you have seen the time of the Holy Prophet, you've seen the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, of Imam Hussain, Imam Hussain, and of my father. What conclusion have you come to in life after all this time? And Jabir says that, Ya ibn Rasulullah, after all this time and having seen all these things that have happened, I now prefer sickness over health, and I prefer old age over youth, and I prefer to be away from the people rather than amongst them. And the Imam alayhi salam replies to Jabir, apparently a reply to Jabir, but really a reply to all of us through Jabir. He says that, Jabir, the reality is that this I is the problem. The reality is that our followers are those who are happy with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees for them. If He decrees happiness, then they're happy at happiness. If He decrees for them to go through trials and tribulations, then they're happy at that. And if He decrees for them health, then they are pleased with health. And if He decrees for them sickness, then they're happy at sickness. And if He decrees youth, then they're happy for youth. And if He decrees old age, then they're also happy at that. It is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for them, which is the most important thing.
Allama Amini, in his encyclopedia Al-Ghadir, describes that Jabir was actually died at the age of 94 years old in the year 78 Hijri. And he says that Jabir was buried in Medina, and he is actually buried in Al-Baqi'. There is also apparently from some of the later day scholars an opinion that says actually Jabir had to leave Medina because after what Hajjaj had done to him and the pressure that he put on Medina, Jabir left and went towards Iraq, modern day Iraq, and he was buried far away from the towns. He died there lonely and far away from the towns. Apparently several hundred years later, in the 20th century, one of the kings of Iraq had seen a dream that Jabir and Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, their graves are being waterlogged. The river has become very close. The Tigris River, in an area which they were buried, was now seeping water towards their graves. And he saw in a dream that Jabir and Hudayfa, their graves are being waterlogged, and they were asking that their graves be moved to another location. And the king, after hearing the same dream from someone else, one of the scholars of his court, decides to carry out this act. And apparently when they exhumed the grave of Hudayfa and Jabir, they saw that the bodies were pure, as if they were someone who was still alive. And this was someone who had been dead for over 1,000 years. And they took out the bodies and they moved it towards Al-Madain, where the great companion Salman al-Muhammadi is buried.
The great story of Jabir al-Ansari is one of awe and inspiration. It is inspiration that lives alive today in every soul that chooses to visit the grave of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, walking across long distances and dangerous lands to reach their beloved. In every walk to the grave of Hussain, in every heart that yearns to visit him, Jabir lives on as a servant to his beloved Hussain.
جابر ما دريت ايش صار بالطافي